Congratulations, Nico. Congratulations, Akshay. Not congratulations, James Hahn, who spent 45 minutes talking to Golfweek, Greg. And I'm not even really sure where to start on this. James Hahn has been very outspoken on Twitter about, I don't know, a lot of things, just a lot of gripes in relationship to what the PGA Tour is doing and what LIV is doing. When asked about the changes made to the 2024 PGA Tour season, Hahn said, quote, "I mean, I hate them," end quote. He would then go on to say things like he couldn't believe Tiger Woods won 2 straight years of a popularity contest. And if Peter Malnati is not going to stick up for the rank and file, he doesn't deserve to be there. And they need people like me, but they don't want people like me. Some portion of that.
Yeah, he has a lot of takes. That's for sure. And he doesn't like the idea that the rich get richer.
He does have some takes.
Yeah.
We have that in common, but that's about it. Sure. That's where it ends.
Yeah, there's takes. But he doesn't like the idea that the rich get richer. And that is what this whole thing boils down to. But ultimately, I think what some of the top guys at the PGA Tour have said, which is, we need to develop a product that we can sell so that we can compete financially with LIV Golf, is, who's a new competitor in the marketplace now. So it's not just like the money on the PGA Tour is pulled out of a hat. These things have to be earned. You have to sell it to sponsors, like all those sponsorship ideas that you guys had. Well, there's a lot that goes into that. One, can you sell all those things? Is there a sponsor willing to bid on them? And I'm sure in many cases there are, but can you get a title sponsor to sponsor an event at the same price if there's not exclusivity, if you will, right? There's all these other sponsors mingled in there. Does that devalue the title sponsor? So my point in saying all that is ultimately this is a business, and you have to make a decision to try to get the highest potential earnings out of it. It didn't used to be that way because there wasn't competition like this, and now all of a sudden you have this competition, which James has talked at length about over the last couple of years, and you have to respond, and you have to create something that's going to be competitive, and you have to try to make improvements for the guys you're afraid of losing. And quite frankly, nobody's afraid of losing James Hahn. The PGA Tour is not afraid of losing him. They're afraid of losing Justin Thomas and Rory McIlroy, right? We all know that. So it's and I'm not saying that they want to lose James Hahn. I'm not saying that they want to lose anybody. They don't. But the players that are that they're catering to now are the really important players. And it's very clear that James Hahn doesn't like that avenue.
Here's my favorite quote. James Hahn describes a scenario in which when Jordan Spieth would talk to an executive in board meetings, they would start blushing and say things like, "Oh my gosh, Jordan's talking to me. How awesome is this?" Which, Kyle, one, is exactly how I feel when Rory McIlroy talked to me. I was like, "Oh my God, how awesome is that?" And two, I think James Hahn's generally an idiot. And I think that he wants his LIV invite and he hasn't gotten it yet, and that's fine. But this is what we've talked about before, where there are 5 or 6 different stakeholders in all of this, and making them all happy is not going to be possible. So executives and the tour have to decide who are we going to make happy, and they are certainly opting for Spieth, Thomas, McIlroy over Malnati, Hahn, everyone else.
I wanted to write about this for our website. It may have just burned it to the ground, so they wouldn't let me. I guess I don't really know, Rick. The Spieth quote was incredible, and that's why I tweeted like Spieth's back was hurting today because he's been carrying James Hahn around for the last 7 years. But what is James Hahn actually upset about?
I don't know.
I don't understand. I guess the only thing, and now listen, I'm not. I think the tour is wrong you can quibble with this, but I don't love the small field no cut stuff. I'm not saying that that's a great thing. Is he mad about not getting as many starts next year as he did last year? Like, I guess the money's increasing, the league is stronger and better than it was, and it just seems like I don't understand what he's upset about.
I think he feels the way that this reads is like a scorned ex-lover I don't think he likes that his opinion wasn't taken seriously, or his opinion wasn't taken and weighed as much as some of the stars. And yes, I do think what he's upset about, Kyle, is what you mentioned. I think he's worried that he's either going to lose starts or he's going to have to play 75 times.
Yeah. So he has this quote in here. It says, and this was the one, well, every quote stood out to me. He said the solution, let's see here. They've created these elevated events where it significantly impacts other full field events sandwiched in between. I don't know. That quote doesn't make sense. The solution to their problem is to limit the number of players that get into elevated events to force the other players into the other full field non-elevated events. To me, it's a road we have to be very careful on because going back to our mission and our purpose is to be able to create the best playing opportunities for our membership and be able to contribute and donate back to the communities and charities that we play in. Seems like the major theme of these last few years has been about how do we get the most money to the most popular players on tour. First of all, welcome to professional sports, James Hahn. And second of all, and I actually am empathetic to this. The PGA Tour, it's in a weird place because it's membership run and it's a nonprofit, right? And so I think technically Hahn is correct in saying, like, well, the goal of the tour should be for its membership to get a ton of playing opportunities. Technically true. And goal of the tour is to give back to charities. Technically true. Guess what, James Hahn? That's not how the real world works. Like, that's not how any of this operates. You know, like, that's why LIV exists. That's why we're here to begin with. So functionally, you have to change what your mission and what you're putting your effort toward so that you can give to charity at all, because if not, then the league won't exist and there won't be any money to give to charity. I think that's the part that it's like, are you not understanding that? And he's like, well, those guys won't go to LIV anyway. That's a hell of a thing to bet your business on. We should just keep the status quo. And you're betting on the opinion of players that don't really matter to your league that Rory and JT won't go to LIV. That sounds like a good idea to bet the future of your business on. I don't know, man. There's so much in here that it's like, I get where he's like sort of the universe that he's coming from, but it's like, yeah, that's why we're in this position to begin with, you know? And that's, I don't know. There's just a lot of that in there, I think.
Right. I agree. It sucks for him for like in his specific position, but like, what's the tour supposed to do here? Patrick, last word on this.
It doesn't suck that bad though.
I know that it's relative.
Go ahead.
It's all relative, right? The guy's made like $12 million playing golf.
Sad.
It doesn't suck, but like relatively speaking. But here's he tweeted out this. I think this is from this morning. It says, morning thoughts on the new structure of the PGA Tour. And here's the quote: with so much on the line these days, top 70 making the playoffs, exemptions and elevated events, it gives the quote top players more opportunities to stay on top. We have basically given them 8 more tournaments with guaranteed money and points by taking away from average players. If I play 28 events a year, it doesn't seem likely I will be playing 28 events next year, given the same status, and especially not with the same amount of points. Example, i.e. opposite field events. If a top player falls behind, he can add more events to his schedule to earn more points. The rich get richer, end quote.
Yeah. So my thing about this is they mentioned in that Golfweek article, or Rory talked about it, about the churn rate. From going, they ran the numbers. The guys at PGA Tour headquarters.
They ran through rickrungood.com, probably.
Yeah.
That's right.
Some mixed condition models. And it went from, I think, 80%, which they felt was way too high, down to 60%.
Yeah, 80% was their original kind of proposal back at the Delaware delegation. in September.
TM.
It's a catchy name.
Really?
And it's down to 60, which will kind of, move the weight along. Or so my thing about this is, and it goes back to Harris English about a top player, is he was a top player. He was I think borderline top 10 player in the world a couple years ago. And like I said, nominated for Player of the Year, twice a winner, all these accolades. And he is the prime example of a top player. Yes, it has to do with injury, but he did lose his game a little bit. And he's not a Ricky Fowler type who's going to get one of the 4 sponsors exemptions where
shoot the sponsor exemptions into the sun, by the way. That's garbage.
He's going to have to play himself back into these tournaments. So that just kind of ruins James Hahn's article if you use Harris English as the use case.
In what way, Patrick?
He was a top player, top 10 in the world. I think he reached as high as 10. I could be wrong about that. And he just absolutely fell off the face of the map where, say if that continued, say he doesn't get the world ranking points and something like that continued going into the next month or so, and he drops out of, I think you have to be top 30 in the official world golf rankings and top 50 in the FedEx Cup to get into these events next year. He could easily be out of those. And I will say that does leave a door open for Liv to pick off some of these guys. If we're being honest about the whole ecosystem where it's, I could fight my way through the Honda Classic, through the Valspar, these tournaments I've never played before and never have wanted to travel to, or I could take a payday from Liv and play 14 events a year. I will say, I think that's the one downside that maybe the PGA Tour didn't think about is these guys who do lose their game, they're going to be Liv's prime targets, and you're forcing them to play in events they might not want to.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
But at the same time, you have guys like, Chris Kirk, who just won the Honda Classic and skipped a designated event because he thought he would do better at the Honda Classic, and ends up winning. And it's a monumental moment in his career. So, I mean, these non-designated events are not nothing tournaments, right? They offer 500 FedEx Cup points. The designated events offer 550 for the winner. It's a minor in comparison. And you could make the argument, if you're James Hahn, if you get quote unquote relegated to the non-designated events, you have a better chance of getting in the top 50 the next year. It's probably not better, but you have an opportunity to play week in and week out as somebody like Harris English against not John Rahm, against not Scotty Scheffler, against not Justin Thomas, because all those guys are playing together. So they're not mixed up anymore. You get guys who are kind of your peers at the moment. Now we see this all, like Michael Kim all of a sudden in Puerto Rico finishes top 5. He's a great player, but he's not going to finish top 5 in a designated event. We know that. But all of a sudden, he could play his way into a designated event playing in, some of the smaller fields. So I think it's full of opportunity for these guys. And James doesn't want to see it that way.
I think the argument that you're making, Greg, is dependent on how many FedEx Cup points they allocate to the.
Might that change? Is that going to change?
It is going to change. That was that was in the memo that Monahan sent to the player. So that's going to be pretty interesting. He didn't say like what the numbers were going to be, but it is going to be different than it was before. I think that James Hahn is upset that his world got a little more difficult, right? You can't just it got harder. And I do understand what he's saying about, well, I thought our mission was to create a lot of playing opportunities for everybody, because I think that is technically that is the PGA Tour's mission. But the reality is that the PGA Tour's mission should be to create the best league imaginable, the best business imaginable. And I think the weird part about all this, and I was talking to some people on Twitter about this, so publicly, but like it's kind of weird. It would be kind of weird if Patrick Mahomes was making up the bylaws of the NFL, or Giannis was determining like how the structure of the NBA was going to be for the next 10 years. That's kind of weird, right? And the reason for it is because you have a membership organization and that's a nonprofit. But man, like it would, it does. I don't like the stars. Like you should always incentivize like stars to thrive in your league. I'm not saying that correctly. There should be incentive. Like you should reward stars, but it's weird when the stars are the ones that are arriving at that decision. And that's just the nature of like the setup of the league. And I don't really know that can be helped. Last thing, Rick, I could do an hour on James Hahn.
I know. He
said this. He was talking about the PIP. This is the one that just destroyed me. He said, we never should have gone to $100 million for the PIP to begin with. That's $50 million we just threw away on this experiment. Okay. And we knew that no one was really going to go jump ship. Again, good luck betting on that. You're just funneling money to this small group of people because they were demanding it. They were literally negotiating with the tour, and they were saying this is what they want or else. I don't know if that happened. I don't know if that's true. I don't know who that was. But James Hahn said they basically said, not word for word, but they basically said, we want $120 million in the PIP or else. And we said, okay, what if we give you 100? Okay, we'll settle for 100. That's not how a business is run. That's not how an organization is run. That's not how the PGA Tour should be run. That's literally how all businesses run, is negotiating. Like that one just like, I just read it and I was like, that's not how business is run. That's not how organization is run. Literally every business in the world runs on negotiation. Like that's just like business economics 101. And that he would say that was just there's almost like this illiteracy in terms of how people view the PGA Tour, and part of that's their fault, right? The nonprofit thing, but man, it's not. This is 21st century sports. It's big boy business. It's not like, barnstorming the US and giving, like, it's great that they give to charity, but there's a threat that is engendering a lot of these decisions that people are like just forgetting about.
We got to move on. But my favorite thing is when he says, Jordan Spieth is so well-spoken. He's one of the best players in the world. He's very, very smart. He's very likable. He's great in these meetings, both on and off the course. Also, I don't understand why people take his opinion more seriously than mine. I'm like, I don't know, like everything you probably just listed.